Well, hello, and welcome to Embracing Our Ancestors. This is our first of many series and videos to come that we'll be presenting to you in regards to our African American heritage, dating back as far as we can possibly go. Just know that while I'm presenting this to you, I'm also researching at the same time, hoping that I can find ancestors further back than the year 1770. And so today I want to begin this series with where are our African American ancestors? I've learned to embrace them and to love those that I've been able to find. One of the things about my ancestry is that I knew very little about them. On my father's side or my mother's side, we didn't talk much about family and where my parents came from or where my dad's parents came from, and especially my mom's parents. My dad having died when I was 10 years old, we never really got to know his side of the family that well, although they lived all around us. And we knew second cousins, third cousins, but very little about our aunts and uncles and near relatives that were close by. And through ancestry research, I began to discover that my dad, and on his side, there were several siblings that we didn't know. And so that intrigued me. It gave me a great interest in discovering and wanting to learn who my ancestors were and trying to go as far back as I could and learn as much about them in history. And as I began to do it, and I saw their lives roll out, I just fell in love with them because, I mean, you know, it's family. And family is a wonderful thing. It's one of the greatest things I believe that we have in the world. So we must learn to embrace them and to love them for who they are. And so today, as we begin this series, I want us to realize that our ancestors are basically the same place that all other people of other ethnicities will find their ancestors. Ours may be a little different based upon the period of time, especially before the Civil War. And so when looking for African Americans before the Civil War as well as afterwards, I believe you got to diligently search the legal records. You've got to be diligent in your search, and then you've got to be patient in your search. It just won't roll out overnight for you. It's going to take time. You have to work at it. You have to think through some things, and then you have to come back and develop a new hypothesis for where you want to go and to think about what you really want to find when looking for your ancestors. And so before the Civil War, what you will find is that you'll find the wills and probates of slave owners will be a major contribution to finding your African American ancestors. Slave owners bequeath their slaves to their family members, people they loved, people they cared about. If they wanted to be a blessing to them beyond their death, then they would give them slaves that would be theirs, and they probated their slaves. And then you find them in deed records. Deed records were often given out to the children of slave owners who said, okay, you're getting married, daughter, I want you to have this slave or this slave. And so consequently, you can have a deed that shows that you are the rightful owner. And so deed records were given out sometimes just to sons when they got a certain age and they wanted those kids to have a great start in life. Slave owners would then give their sons and other relatives slaves that they really cared about. And then if you're fortunate enough, you can find some plantation records. Plantation records are very, very difficult to find, but there's a book in the Dallas Library, and in most public libraries, main public libraries around the country, that has an index of all slave plantations as well as slave owners, the county, and all of that. Now, there are some that are missing because this index was based off of the slave narrative. After the Civil War, during the Reconstruction period, The Freedmen's Bureau went around to collect narratives from all former slaves to try to preserve the history of African Americans during that time. And so in this book, which is an index of plantations, an index of slaves, through the narratives they picked up where plantations might be found, and they are recorded in a book. And you may want to look for state records in county courthouses and other places like that. Look in tax records and vital records, and you'll find that in those tax records and vital records, they always have a listing from 1790, when the first census was developed and taxes were beginning to be collected. There was always a listing of the number of slaves that an individual owned. And so in those tax records, it will give you the number of slaves. It'll never give you the name of the slave, but at least if you know the name of the slave owner, you'll be able to look into those tax records and be able to find whether your ancestor possibly could have been owned by this person simply because they owned a number of slaves. And then they give a range of slave ages and things of that nature. And so we'll be looking at some of that later. And then you can look in vital records, court records. And there's a wonderful, wonderful book for those of you who are in Texas and a few other states by Edith Smith and Vivian Lehaman. That's Mother and Daughter, a book entitled No Land, Slaves Only. No Land, Slaves Only. And what you'll find in that book is they went through the court records all around the state of Texas and other states. And they looked into those records and they pulled out slaves that they found throughout those records, in deeds and wills, wherever they found the name of a slave mentioned, they recorded it in that book. And then if you don't have FamilySearch.org, go to FamilySearch.org, it's free, join up. Ancestry.com is another site. Ancestry.com is not free, but it is one of my favorites, just like Family Search is. I use the two together. I use Family Search and then I go to Ancestry.com and try to find what I can find in regards to my ancestors, because I know the name of the slave owner and I know who they were owned by. My research is very, very prominent in this area. And then go to the libraries, do all the research you can, looking in county books that are in the library. There are books that are on almost every county through America that tells you some of their history, some of their background. At least if you know your ancestor lived in that state and lived in that county, then you'll be able to find them in the library records and you'll be able to see some of the things that they actually were going through and things they experienced. And then after the Civil War from 1870 to 1840, census records are a wonderful, wonderful thing to have access to. And you'll find that on Ancestry.com as well as FamilySearch.org. And then 1867 voter registration record that had been very, very beneficial to me. And then the Freedmen's Bureau and the Freedmen's Bank records are another great source. They've been doing wonderful work lately, getting out all of the records. The Freedmen's Bureau was developed after the Civil War and during the Reconstruction period. Those records are great. They did a lot of work. They helped people get married, develop names, and what you'll find here is that the slave narratives were also written by them. And then you have records of United States colored troops in the Civil War, and then look for birth certificates after the Civil War. All of these records you will find are essential, but you've got to be diligent in your search. If you want to get anywhere, it's going to take some real tenacity to be able to find where your African-American ancestors are. One of the things that have helped me greatly in looking for my African-American ancestry is the goal, based on Alex Haley's books, The Roots, is to always try to get back to Africa. That's our goal, is to find who we belong to in the motherland. And so DNA tests will help you find your living family in America, both in Africa as well as your distant ancestors and the tribes that they came from here in America through ancestry. And so what you can do is on some lighter pages, and we'll go there, and you can look in and see where you actually came from. For instance, my DNA says that I'm 88% African, 49% Nigerian, Hausa and Fulani tribe, the Yabaro tribe, and the Igbo tribe. I'm also been in Togo, 18% from the Dahomey tribe. And then Cameroon, Congo, and Southern Bantu people, I'm 16% of. I've got some French in me, I've got some Norwegian in me, I've got some Malay in me, and I've got some England, Wales, and Northwestern Europe in me. And so if you look at the right side there, it tells you all of these places where my DNA came from. But now the great thing about this is, and looking at some of the other areas, you'll find where the ancestors that I'm from in the Benin Togo tribe, the Dahomey tribe, on the pages that are adjacent to this, it'll tell you about the Dahomey tribe if that's where you're from. Whatever tribe you're from, it will give you information on that tribe. And what I've come to understand is that the Dahomey tribe was one of the last tribes that was illegally brought to America after the international slave trade ended in 1808. In 1859 to 1861, the Dahomey were on the ship Clotilda that came to America illegally in the Gulf of Mexico and landed in Mobile, Alabama. And when they landed in Mobile, Alabama there, they sunk the ship. That ship had just recently been found, and I understand that they're going through great measures to exhume that ship, bring it back up, and to restore it. And so that to me was great knowledge to know that I'm from 18% from the Dahomey tribe and the Benin Togo tribe. And so this helps you to understand what tribes you may have been from going back to Africa. And so where are our ancestors? Look for them, find them. And when you find them, you will find a jewel. You will find that chasing them and looking for them in all the right places, pulling together all of the pieces, the loose pieces that you've collected over a period of time will truly be beneficial to you in your ancestry research. I am grateful to God that He allowed me to do research to help me find where my ancestors are. And so hopefully this presentation has been helpful to you. You will be benefited by it. And I hope you'll tune in next week, as next week we look more in-depthly at the Freedmen's Bureau and how the Freedmen's Bureau records really worked to give assistance to finding our ancestors. Tell somebody, embrace your ancestors and love them for what they went through, because we are the only reality that they ever existed. God bless you, God be with you, and I'll see you next time.